All right, let's talk about responding to a draft. Now, when we are giving feedback on somebody else's writing, we want to ask ourselves certain questions about that writing. We also we want to do this for anything. When we hear somebody speak, we want to ask ourselves certain questions about what they said. When we watch a movie, when we see an article online, when we um, watch the news, we want to ask ourselves questions about the presentation, right? Um, how effective was the thing that we just saw? Would you have done it the same way? And this helps us not only understand um, the thing that we're engaging with, the thing that we're responding to, but it also helps us then um, be better, more effective communicators ourselves when we ask ourselves these questions. So let's look at some questions that we can ask when we are responding to something. And it says responding to a draft, but we can really generalize this to a lot more. So we'll talk a little bit about like we'll talk about movies and writing, so that we have a sense of like mixed media that we can respond to. So first question: what did you think when you saw the title? So titles aren't super important, but they're important in a sense, which is they're basically the first thing we see when we engage with some work. So when we see a commercial and the movie has a title, the title might really grab your interest. Um, when you read something, the title might explain what the thing's going to be about. Um, those are important questions to ask about the title, right? Um, does the beginning grab your attention? So no matter what you're doing, whether you're reading or you're watching TV, um, you want you never want a boring beginning. That's the worst kind of boring because you start off boring and the person's just gonna they're just gonna stop reading and they're gonna stop watching. You want the beginning to probably be the most exciting part, because you want the person to immediately become completely engaged in what you're doing. If your beginning is not interesting, then you're going to feel that boredom set in. You're going to lose your audience. It's sad to judge a book by its cover, or judge a movie by its preview, but ultimately we do, right? We do judge those things. So um, we and in a way, Those are the most important things, if only in the sense that they determine whether we're going to look at the rest. Whether we're going to watch the whole movie depends on how good the preview might have been, or how good the first 5 minutes of the movie might have been. So that's important. Consider the beginning. Um, and then, is there a clear thesis? So this is especially important for writing, nonfiction writing. Importantly, what is the writing trying to say? But it's also important for like if you're reading a novel or watching a fictional movie. Um, you could ask yourself, in a story, you don't have a thesis, you're not making an argument, but you might have a theme. Um, and you could ask yourself, what's the theme of that story? And you should be able to tell. If you can't tell, if it's unclear, then maybe they weren't clear, right? Um, is there sufficient support for the thesis? So this is important. You can't just have a bare thesis. You can't just assert your thesis and expect people to believe you. You have to actually support it. You have to give reasons for your thesis. And it has to be convincing. So it has to be documented, it has to be detailed, and um, it has to relate to the thesis in a way that supports it. Um, and that includes for movies too. You have to see how all the parts are related to the theme of the movie. The movie can't just be this wandering story that never gets anywhere, right? You want the movie to have some kind of clear message or clear theme. Um, does the text have a clear pattern of organization? This is important too. You don't want what you're reading to just wander around where you don't know where it's going, you don't know how the things are related. You don't want that from a story either, right? You don't want to just feel like it's one thing after another and you never actually get anywhere and then it just ends. And for endings, you want the ending to be satisfied. You want to feel closure. For something that has a thesis, like you want to feel convinced, or even if you're not convinced, you want to say, yeah, they they really made the case, and I see the case. And for a story, you want to feel like the story ended. You want to feel like what they set up at the beginning, they closed out at the end. Can you tell the writer's stance or attitude toward the subject or audience? So you can reflect when you're reading, you can reflect, okay, so what does the author think? Are they being professional? Are they being casual? Do they think positively on their subject, negatively? When somebody's telling you a story, which characters do they like? Which characters do they dislike? Um, what are the ideas that they're putting forward? You can think about that kind of thing. And if it's unclear, like maybe the tone is unclear, the style is inconsistent, then maybe you can critique that. How well does the text meet the needs and expectations of the audience? Okay, so the text has to consider the audience. So if you, as an audience, were unable to get through it, that's bad, right? Because it needs to be readable, it needs to be viewable. They ran into a problem if you're not able to get through it. So what hung you up? At what point did you get hung up? At what point did you stop watching? Those are questions you could ask. And what would have helped you get through it? Some more stuff. Do terms need defining? Are charts, graphs, tables clear and readable? Are sentences complete and grammatical? So things like this. Things like this. And can words and phrases be sharpened? This is just basic elements of writing, right? Did they do all of the little nitty-gritty pieces of writing that they needed to? But it could relate to viewing a movie as well, right? So, do terms need defining? How does that relate to a movie? Maybe there's a character and you don't even know the character's name because they never introduce them. Or are charts and graphs and tables clear and readable? In a movie, you might have everything that's too dark to see. Some movies are like that, where it's just everything's really dark, or you don't understand what's going on because everything's so choppy and the action's so fast you can't even see what's going on. Maybe the scenes cut before they should cut, and you don't know what happened because they weren't complete scenes. So those kinds of things can be considered regardless of the medium. We can talk about how did this text or film, how did you receive it, and was it effectively received? Was it effectively produced, and was it effectively received by you? Did they achieve their purpose? And when did they fall short of their purpose? So those are things we can think about when we're responding, and that includes for things like a giving feedback to a friend, or it includes things like giving a movie review, things like that, where you're responding to another form of communication.